for me, that's what the story was about. It was this moment when two sinful humans were able to have the scales lifted from their eyes to see their actions and to see the truth.
I'm checking and testing, checking, testing, checking, testing, checking, testing.
Jerry's my name. I'm sitting with my son, Lachlan. I'm going to ask him a few questions regarding his feelings about my wife and I having an abortion before him and almost aborting him, in fact. Lachlan, welcome.
Thank you.
Do you remember the first time you learned about your almost abortion?
I don't remember the moment that I learned of it, but I remember being in high school and being aware of the story that there had been a pregnancy before me, that there had been an abortion, that when my mother was pregnant with me, that there was an episode where she went to the clinic, and there was almost a simultaneous change of heart among both you and her. And as a young person, it was part of my narrative, part of my self-identity. As a student in high school, I was interested in film and theater, as you know, and I tried to write it into a screenplay at one point. I thought it was such a compelling story. As a young person, it didn't quite have the moral valence that it does now. It's come to be a story of redemption, a story that has taught me about redemption, about the power of Jesus to forgive sins, to convert souls, to bring us around away from sin and to reconcile us to him.
Lachlan, do you ever think about the lost sibling that you didn't grow up with?
I do think about the lost older sibling, and I also think about the lost younger sibling who miscarried. Both of you certainly made that sibling very much a part of our lives. And by making that lost child a part of our life with music and prayer, it helped me to have a connection to those who are living in paradise. I think now that I'm in a large family with many kids, and my sister has a lot of kids, and all of our friends have a lot of children, it's natural for me to think of a large family, and I populate my imagination of my own siblings with these other siblings that live in Jesus now.
Now that you have a large family and you've been a father for 12 years or so, 13, have you had thoughts of your father's moral failures and how it impacts your own sense of your manhood?
You know, the great stories of the Christian faith involve sin and overcoming sin. Whether it's Saint Augustine or any number of saints who have turned away from sin, or the tax collectors and prostitutes who turned away from sin to follow Jesus. And sin is a part of our condition. And it's the more parochial part of it. But converting away from it is the more powerful aspect. And the story of the abortion and then the almost second abortion, for me, growing up, was a lot less about what was done and then what was almost done, and a lot more of a moment of clarity and recognizing the moral valence of the action. And for me, that's what the story was about. It was this moment when two sinful humans were able to have the scales lifted from their eyes to see their actions and to see the truth. It's a teaching moment of how to emulate both of you, because there are many actions that are normal and expected in our society that nevertheless have a deep moral relevance. But we can only realize that if we take a moment to look at it, and not to be content with what society thinks is perfectly fine and what we all should have a right to do. And the story that you both taught me, the lesson that you both taught me was that we all have the power to do that, to break free of conventions that prevent us from seeing the moral valence of our actions. We can see into the cosmic relevance of our actions.
And so you saw the redemptive power of the cross.
Right. I saw in the actions, in saying no to abortion, I saw Jesus forever holding out his hand, never turning away, forgiving 7 times, 77 times, and an example of two people who decided to turn away from darkness, to turn towards light.
And accept his love.
You know, the thing about sin is Christ forgives sins, and we ask for forgiveness, and forgiveness is given, and we are reconciled to him, and we make penance for our sins, and we bridge the gap that had alienated us from our God. And so we've repaired the damage that's been done in our relationship to the Lord, and we can repair the damage that's done to others. But the sin doesn't really go away. It's still something that's there that we think about. It's the sort of accident of sin remains, even as the incidents of sin are taken away, to use Thomistic language. And we continue to live with these sins. And in one sense, they shape who we are. But in another sense, they are fundamentally not who we are. Because sin is an absence of existence. It's an absence of good and being. It's like a nothingness. And so when we sin, we're acting contrary to who we actually are and how God sees us. And we're sort of filling ourselves with these holes that remove our true self. We're like the Swiss cheese. And what I like to think, it's an image from Dante, is that the sin that we commit is what is not real. That's the thing that gets left behind when we cross over. So there's this moment at the end of the Purgatorio where Dante crosses over the river Lethe, and he remembers who he is and he remembers his life, but he can't remember any of the sins that he committed. And people are talking to him about the stuff he's done on earth, and he can't remember those sins that he did because they aren't real. So they truly have been lifted. And that's, I like that way of thinking about sin, because I think it's very contrary to the way that the modern world often thinks about sin. That when we do something bad, especially when we get caught, we think no one's looking, that's the assumption is that's who we really are. They've seen the true person, when it's actually the reverse. And what God sees is not the sins. God sees, Christ shields those, cloaks over those sins. So that speaks to what I took from the story of the abortion and the almost abortion. That the story for me is much less about the sin of ending a life and intending to end a life, and is much more about the moment of conversion away from darkness.
My moral failure of allowing my child to be aborted, and you almost being aborted, was a heavy weight. But when I decided that Jesus can forgive and can take it away, and I can be free from that guilt and shame, it's invigorating, and I can walk in the sunlight as a result. So I love you, son. I'm glad you were not aborted. God is holy. He dwells in a holy place. He cannot abide unholiness. And we have no ability to be holy. But Jesus brings us into the throne room and says, Father, I want you to meet my son Lachlan. He is my heir. And we can come into his presence. And there is joy. Joy is not happiness, and it is not glee. Joy is a special dispensation of love that's given to us by our God and our Redeemer. And joy, we can live in that joy by dwelling in hope of glory that is yours as well.
Eat the hat?
Yeah.
Eat the hat.
I'm open to photographs. I'm having a good hair day.
It's gonna eat your eye now.
Oh,
And I have glasses.
just take a picture of the baby.
No, you don't think I
Talk about your baby.